I bought my house in 2017. I had never really interacted in Baltimore outside of like artscape. I just started exploring neighborhoods because I had convinced myself I wanted to buy a house, and you can't do that. I was living in DC at the time and it was too expensive for me to buy a house. So when I found the neighborhood here and I saw Druid Hill Park, I fell in love with it. It doesn't make sense to me that something as beautiful as Druid Hill Park would be here and it wouldn't spill over to the houses and neighborhoods immediately next door. Everywhere I've gone, if you go to Central Park in New York, the real estate there is worth millions of dollars. If the logic holds, then at some point that will be the same here. Little personal story. As recently as 2 years ago, I was 215 pounds. I was a big guy, and I started running. So every morning I run in the park. Some days as early as 5 a.m. I just come out here, I do my rounds, I get into the woods, and now it's something I have to do. On the parkway, there's a huge disregard for pedestrian traffic and bike traffic, because there's no real, they haven't made any allowances for a coexistence at all, let alone allowances for you to safely cross. The crosswalk sign, I think it's like 14 seconds to get across the street, and it's two 3-lane streets. This is a highway, this isn't a street. It's difficult crossing the street. Different times of day, it's busier than others, but the mentality of the drivers is just that people shouldn't be. At least that's what it feels like when you're trying to cross the street. You see people speeding. I believe it's not local traffic. Most of the people who get around here, they might use it, but the bulk of it is people passing to and from different destinations. Right now we're at the intersection of McCullough, where McCullough turns into Auchentoroly Parkway. And this is where I cross every day when I'm running. This is where I cross, or used to cross, when I was biking to work. It was actually my first day going to work. I was crossing to get across the street, and I was about 3/4 of the way, and a school bus I see is going to come straight at me. A Baltimore City school bus is coming at me, and instead of allowing myself to get hit, I turned towards the sidewalk and I ditched my bike. So I jumped off my bike and I was able to get onto the grass and onto this side safely. So I had to make sure that I didn't get hit. At this intersection, cars habitually just run the red light because they don't see anything and they think it's their right of way to just continue. Some of them are going at such a rate of speed that they can't safely stop anyway, so they just keep going. After that happened, the bus driver stopped, and instead of asking if I was okay, she told me I was okay because she didn't hit me. And I said, how do you factor that? You just ran a red light. She said, no, it's yellow. No, it's yellow. I was like, even if it was yellow, you're a city employee driving a school bus. If there were children in that bus and you had hit somebody today, just think about that affecting them. You're supposed to be driving at a safer standard. I followed up with the city. I also spoke to a lawyer who represents bikers regularly, and all of them basically said there's really nothing to do. This isn't an issue that anybody is going to follow up on. The damage to your bike is worth hundreds of dollars. They won't even reimburse that. I did sprain my ankle that day, so that was part of why I couldn't run for a couple weeks. And it was my first day of work, so I had to call them and tell them that I wasn't coming to work that day. This road was established in the 60s. Everyone was freeway crazy. They thought that this was the way to bring more into the city when it just brings it through the city, at least from what I can see. Not a lot of the neighborhoods on this side are benefiting from anything that you would call from the traffic. So pedestrian safety comes up a lot in our community association meetings, and one of our neighbors, Cheryl Bailey, told the story about when she was crossing the street and a car hit her dog and killed the dog. It's pretty traumatic. She loves her dog. She's always with them. She's always breeding the dogs. And the reason why we have the leaves painted is to bring attention to this area, to celebrate this area, but to also help drivers see that there are people here crossing the street as well, and kind of maybe mitigate the speeds that people are driving at. So when we did this project, we memorialized Cheryl's dog right here with a picture of it. It takes 14 seconds to get across. That's all that's given. And that's if you're taking, you have to be moving pretty quickly, or, you know, if you're using a cane or if you're slowed down at all, you're not going to make it. And, you know, you're hoping that people recognize that you have right of way. A road like this that has 6 lanes, I've heard of proposals to reduce the lanes, narrow the road, and it really doesn't, at least from the proposals I heard, it doesn't affect the through traffic. People would still be able to make it through, but it would be a greater consideration for the neighborhoods around and the people trying to get into the park. Because from what I understand now, there are people who live around here who never even cross the street to get into the park, because it's such a treacherous proposition to get across the street. And for me, I have to get into the park. That's part of my ritual. Every morning I gotta run. And it's just a nice place to read, to go to the conservatory, go look over the city. If you're by the Moorish Tower, when they finish the reservoir, it's gonna be beautiful, and people are gonna want to get into that park. And to have it restricted by something is, I don't want to say silly, but something that can be changed as easily as the amount of time given to you to cross the street, and maybe even a reordering of the traffic. Baltimore was a highly connected city before the highways came about. It was really affordable and easy to get around Baltimore City. When you see old footage of Baltimore, it's how you see old footage of San Francisco. You see the cable cars, you see the trolleys, you see people getting on and off. There was a station here, there were stations in the park. It was all connected. If you wanted to get crosstown, it was really easy. The highways replaced that. It was supposedly the will of the people to get cars into the city, but we can see that it's done more to carve up these neighborhoods and to disconnect them than connect them. And I'm not saying we go back to cable cars, but it was a very effective means of transportation once upon a time. Auchentoroly is a historic designation. I love being part of this neighborhood. I see where it's going to go, and I want to be part of it. And I want to help decide what that looks like and have a stake in it. Another part of why I bought here is because when you're investing, they also tell you buy the worst house on the block. Here, you're spoiled for choice. There are 9 vacants on Parkwood, on the 2900 block of Parkwood. It wasn't always like this. It doesn't have to be like this in the future. We have faith that we're going to change that. 2 years ago, or last year, we got a beautification grant from LifeBridge. And what that involved for us was we laid down some planters. We wanted to reboard the houses. The boarding on the previously was rotted out, it's falling apart. It was gross, it was gray. You can see high up just how it looks from the ones that are still here. So we wanted to add some color and some life and kind of show our intent for our plans for this block, make it an attractive space for people to come around. And when you're here, the difference is night and day. At night, this place is brighter. People see it. I know we still have a problem with trash and the way people treat the area, but they see this and they see what the work we're putting in, and they're actually picking up the trash more and doing more in terms of that. When people talk about gentrification, I let them say their piece, but then I also ask them, how are you involved in the development of these areas? And if you were, what would you do? It's not, when you get involved in a project, you can't just spend a day or two or even a month doing it. You have to have that as your long-term consideration. And that's why things change the way they do. If you don't have the focus and the endurance to finish the job, somebody else does. And they might not have your best interests at heart.